Good day, everybody. It's Andrew here. So, welcome back to the channel. We have some huge updates directly from President Biden himself, as well as his press secretary, Jen Psaki. Now, they say that they do think they will still get portions of the Build Back Better Act passed. And with Bernie Sanders still pushing to get stimulus checks for seniors, this leads us to the question, could we still get that stimulus check for seniors this year on top of Social Security increases, which, of course, we all know President Biden promised on the campaign trail? So in this video, we're going to have a quick update directly from President Biden and Jen Psaki herself. We'll see what they had to say, and I'll give you my 2 cents on what I expect to happen next and whether or not we could get stimulus checks for seniors. But before we jump into it, do me a quick favor. As always, hit like, hit subscribe, and share this channel with anyone who you think might find this helpful. This is a community for seniors, and my job here is to be a voice for you and be a voice for seniors to make sure President Biden keeps his promise to increase Social Security, increase SSI and SSDI, and even approve stimulus checks for seniors in this next stimulus package. So thank you so much for being a part of our community, and if you really want to support my work, consider subscribing to my second channel. The link to that is going to be in the comments of this video, and on that channel we're going to have some updates as well. We're also going to do a live bingo night every Monday night, so it should be a fun channel, and thank you to the 5,000 people who have already subscribed. We should be launching that channel in a couple of weeks. So, President Biden held a press conference this week, and he said that they're going to get portions of the Build Back Better stimulus package done. They also went on to say that he's going to spend the next few months traveling the country and doing in-person speeches. Really, the reason they're doing this is to try and fix his numbers in the polls. Obviously, Biden is doing terrible in the polls, and a lot of people think it's because he hasn't handled inflation well, he hasn't approved stimulus checks for seniors, he hasn't increased Social Security benefits as promised, and really the elephant in the room is the fact that the pandemic is lasting a lot longer than people thought, right? In the back of our minds, I think a lot of us thought that once the vaccines came out, things were going to kind of end a lot more quickly. Things are lasting longer than we thought as far as the pandemic, and quite frankly, we're all sick of it. And at the end of the day, we're going to blame the president for this stuff, right? So to try and fix his numbers in the polls, he's going to hit the road. He's going to be doing a lot more in-person speeches, and they're hoping this could help them maintain control of both the House and the Senate. Currently, the expectation is that in November, when these midterm elections take place, Democrats are going to experience a red wave and lose control of both chambers. So this is kind of their plan. Hit the road, do in-person speeches, and on top of that, do portions of the Build Back Better stimulus package to try and get some stimulus done. This also led them to get questions like, well, how are you going to do multiple smaller packages unless you change the filibuster? If the filibuster isn't changed, the only way they're going to be able to do multiple smaller portions of the Build Back Better Act is by working with Republicans and doing things in a bipartisan way, just like they did the physical infrastructure plan. So they asked Jen Psaki that as well, and they also said they're going to focus on trying to lower prescription drug prices, which again is something that could really help seniors. On top of that, Jen Psaki was also asked whether or not they think the Democratic Party has been leaning too liberal. President Biden has been getting criticized for running as a moderate candidate, but then really trying to do a lot of progressive things that people like Bernie Sanders want to do, and he's been getting criticized for this, saying that he's really not operating as a true moderate. Now, of course, some things can be a little bit too liberal, but there are some things that are progressive that I think people on this channel would agree with, like increasing Social Security benefits, making sure not a single senior is forced to live in poverty, maybe giving those who are rich a smaller COLA and those who are lower income a larger COLA, making Social Security more sustainable, and at the same time ensuring that not a single senior is forced to live in poverty. Things like that are considered liberal and progressive, but I think we could all agree that those are things that have to take place. So in my opinion, I do think portions of this package are going to get done, but what I think is going to end up happening is it's going to be somewhere around $1 trillion, and it's going to have to address inflation. That's really the main thing people are worried about. It should also include the stimulus checks for seniors, as well as things like lowering prescription drug prices. But with that said, a lot of these things are going to be taken out, and we're hoping that with Bernie Sanders fighting for seniors and fighting to include stimulus checks for seniors, that these things will make it in the package. Now, my biggest worry here is that with things taking so much longer, this Build Back Better Act is probably going to take 6 months at this point. That kind of makes it feel like Social Security increases are going to get pushed until the end of this year or even potentially even next year. So we're in a position where President Biden is already 1 year into his presidency. He still has not increased Social Security benefits. And now we're worried that this could take another 6 months or even potentially even longer. So, with that said, folks, let's take a look and see what President Biden said. Then we'll see what Jen Psaki had to say. They're going to answer questions regarding the Build Back Better stimulus package, potentially working on a bipartisan level with Republicans, and the fact that President Biden is going to hit the road in hopes of trying to increase their poll numbers to try and win these midterm elections in November. So, guys, don't forget to subscribe. We should have a lot of updates in the next couple of weeks regarding potential stimulus checks for seniors, the next stimulus package, and Social Security changes as well. So, thank you so much for watching. Let's take a look, see what President Biden had to say. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you on the next video.
Is there anything that you are confident you can get signed into law before the midterm elections?
Yes, I'm confident we can get pieces, big chunks of the Build Back Better law signed into law. It's clear to me that that we're going to have to probably break it up. I think that we can get, and I've been talking to a number of my colleagues on the Hill, I think it's clear that we would be able to get support for the $500+ billion for energy and the environmental issues that are there, number one. Number two, I know that the two people who've opposed, on the Democratic side at least, support a number of the things that are in there. For example, Joe Manchin strongly supports early education, 3 and 4 years of age, strongly supports that. There is strong support for, I think, a number of the way in which to pay for these, pay for this proposal.
Probably rely on them more to get a lot of the business done and negotiations and work with Congress. He, of course, is always going to be someone who picks up the phone and talks to people he's known for a long time in Congress, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, and he'll continue to do that. But it's a reflection of how he wants to spend his time and his recognition that he wants to spend more time out in the country and less time behind closed doors negotiating.
Is that a course correction or a lesson learned from the first year of being on the job and going through the paces?
I wouldn't put it exactly in those terms. I would say that it's a reflection of how our own of his view, which we share, of how we can best use his time. And there's nothing more valuable than the president's time. But it also means bringing members of Congress with him on the road sometimes. Having them listen to the American people, people who agree with them and don't agree with them. COVID obviously has posed some challenges, but that's what it's a reflection of.
Another legislative question. The president talked about breaking up pieces and Build Back Better. I think I understood what he was trying to say there, but just for clarity for congressional process nerds. He's still talking about
We're in D.C., it's a safe place. Lots of process nerds here.
Scaling back a single reconciliation package, moving that forward, and then maybe voting on things that aren't in that package. Is that the context here?
Well, he wasn't necessarily dictating what the size would look like. He wants to get as big of a chunk as we can get done and through Congress. He also recognizes that nothing is going to get done without 50 votes. So we're not confronting a choice between what can happen in our ideal. It's a choice between, do we make critical progress for the economic well-being of middle-class families and in tackling climate crisis or not? So right now, it's determining how big that chunk can be through the reconciliation process, which, as you know as a budget nerd, requires 50 votes. If you break different pieces apart, or as you continue to fight for anything that might not be in there, it would require 60 votes, of course. And if there's 10 Republicans who want to support efforts, of course we'd welcome that. But he's talking about getting a big chunk, as much as you can get done, where we can get an agreement of 50 members of the Senate.
When will the White House engage in new talks with Senator Manchin on Build Back Better? Last night he told reporters that no one has contacted him.
Well, I think, as I've said here before, we are not going to read out or detail all of our engagements with every senator, including Senator Manchin. And we are in touch with every senator at a senior staff level. That is true, but of course he's a key part of getting legislation across the finish line, and you heard the president convey his desire and interest in doing exactly that.
Will a new Build Back Better proposal be forthcoming without the expanded child tax credit?
I'm not going to prejudge what it's going to look like. The president proposed an extension of the child tax credit because it's something he very much believes in. It helped cut the cut childhood poverty by 40% last year. That's significant. A lot of families, it helped a lot of families get them some breathing room, help them make ends meet. But again, what the president knows is that there is agreement in Congress among Democrats about a couple of things. Doing more to lower costs, lowering costs for childcare, for health care, negotiating with on prescription drugs, and we got to figure out what we can get in a big chunk of a package to get it across the finish line. But I'm not going to negotiate from here.
Hi, Jen. Two questions. First, on what's ahead. I attended the GOP House leadership press conference today on Biden's 1 year.
Oh boy.
And,
Did they have lots of good stuff to say?
well, Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy rejected the idea that the president floated yesterday that Republicans are blocking his agenda. He said the White House has not approached them about his agenda outside of infrastructure. What's your reaction to his words that you're not working with Republicans? And what's the pathway forward for his larger agenda items if there is going to be a breakup of Build Back Better?
I would say that if Mr. McCarthy wants to come over here and have a constructive conversation about more we can do together to put people back to work, to protect people from the virus, to put in place more smarter security measures at the border, we'd be happy to have that conversation. I don't think that's a comment he made that's entirely on the level, given we certainly have engaged with Republicans across the board. The President of the United States himself has, and so I don't think that really bears out in fact.
Well, to his point, though, the administration, or Senate Democrats at least, Democrats, however, proceeded with Build Back Better through budget reconciliation. They approached it with the intent that they would need only Democrats to get that agenda done. Again, for this question, looking at chunks, what's the bipartisan plan moving forward?
Well, look, in the history of reconciliation and the use of it, it's been bipartisan about 20 times. You can't, it's not the rule you can't vote for it if you're from the other party. That's not the rule at all. And if anyone's telling you that, that's not true. I would say that what's perplexing to us, and maybe somebody asked Mr. McCarthy this or not, is are Republicans now against negotiating lower prescription drug prices? Are they now against lowering the cost of childcare? Are they now against lowering the cost of elder care? I mean, if they allow us to claim all of those things on the Democratic side, we'll take them.
There's a conversation brewing that I'm sure you're aware of about the direction of the Democratic Party, and it's no longer just sort of confined to the Substack discontents. The Times has this focus group that they published a sort of transcript of that Frank Luntz, your favorite pollster, held, and one voter
no
says,
issue with Franklin.
Okay. And one voter says, I just want to send a message. I think the Democratic Party is nuts at the moment, and the only way I can send that message is with my vote. And then another voter responds to that, yeah, the progressives have taken over the Democratic Party. I just want you to respond to that and to the broader criticisms that the administration is being moved too far to the left, and that could present challenges down the road for you.
Well, I'm not going to respond to individual people in focus groups, but I will tell you that the president's view and our view is that his agenda is one that is broadly popular in the country among many progressives, but also among many moderates and, frankly, many Republicans who are maybe not sitting in this zip code, but are members of the public writ large. And that's because negotiating the price of prescription drugs is something people think is long overdue. That's because a lot of people can't afford the cost of childcare. It is prohibitively expensive. That is why 2 million women, in part why 2 million women are not in the workforce. A lot of people don't know how to afford elder care, especially when they're paying for childcare. People don't know how to get universal pre-K for their kids, or they can't afford to do it. They put them in daycare, making them less likely, by data, less likely to graduate from college. Those are things that are American issues. They're not Democratic or progressive issues. And his agenda is broadly popular across the spectrum. We also know that that there are challenges that the American people is going through a lot right now. And we've talked about this before, but obviously we're at a point where we're still fighting a pandemic. We didn't think we'd still be there. That's frustrating to people, no matter what wing of the party or whether you're a Republican. It's frustrating to everybody. We certainly understand that, and we know that's why we need to focus on getting the pandemic under control and continuing to address costs.